Hello everybody, this is CJ Wiley with more adventures on the road. There's a couple players that were a little bit before my time. I kind of caught the tail end of their career, and that was Denny Searcy and Reid. Some of you may have saw the videos that Reid made called No Time for Negative, which has some good stuff in there. He's got some good kicking systems and whatnot. But I talked to him a few times about pool and kind of what his philosophy was. He was known to be one of the best payball players in the country or in the world. They had a big payball game, which is 6 ball on a snooker table, and each ball will be worth a certain amount. Like they could play for 20 a ball or 50 a ball, and sometimes they would have games for 100 a ball that would last for days, and people would get in and out of the ring game because they played multiple-handed. Imagine if you're playing 6-handed for 100 a ball, you're making like $500 a ball off of each ball you make, 100 from each player. So it can get really serious as far as what you can win. Plus, this was back like in the 70s when they were doing this, in the early 80s. So $100 was a little bit more than it is these days. But one thing that interested me, Jimmy was big on hitting the ball as pure and straight as possible. And that's also my philosophy, that I've, through all my experience, I want to be able to hit that ball as perfectly straight as possible. And that enables you to do pretty much whatever you can think or imagine, and your creativity opens up as far as your pool game. But to get to that level, I've stressed what the important parts are. And the number one most important part is the foundation. Just like any other structure, if you don't have a good foundation, the rest of your building isn't going to be quite right. And the higher it gets, the more it'll be off. And so I'm a big advocate of getting that foundation as good as you possibly can. And that's why I put together my newest training tools, which is a Super Stroke and Super Stance Trainer. And they're available at cjwiley.com. You get both of them at the same time, because it is a mat, as far as the stance goes, that shows you the exact feet position to use to develop how you go down on the ball. Instead of going down with your head and your upper body, you push your hips back. You're controlling everything with the center of your body. And if you play pool or tennis, you'll know from experience that the center of the body is where you get your power and ultimately your control. I mean, that's true in martial arts too. They say your power source is about 2 inches below your navel, and that center is so important, because your hips for kicking and footwork, and the pool. And in the pool world, the footwork isn't something that's talked about very much. And really it's because the way it's been taught, it's just not as good as it can be. What I did was fine-tune how to go down on the ball and make it as simple and repeatable as possible. Now, to learn this takes 2 or 3 weeks, like anything else. It's like riding a bike. You can't just do it the first day just because you know how to do it. You have to practice it, and it takes X amount of repetitions. I made a video for a friend of mine that's real serious about pool. I'm going to get that out to everybody that orders these tools. Here in the next couple days, I'm going to email everybody a copy of this video. I didn't want to make it public because the lighting isn't quite as good as I'd like. I made it by myself with a camera phone, but the information is really good, because I show how to train with this super stance so that you can learn this and develop it and make it yours for sure. because a lot of people learn visually, and trying to teach what I'm suggesting you do is a lot more difficult trying to explain it than it is when I put it down visually, because you get this mat, it shows you where to put the feet, it shows you how to connect it to the line of the shot, and how to get in a position so that you can just step your left foot over, push your hips back, and fall right straight down on the ball. Just like you're shooting a pistol, you'll go straight down on it. Where most people start out a little bit too far to the left, their eyes make an adjustment, but it's really an illusion what they're seeing, because when they get down, they have to shift over to their right and turn, and it puts them in more of a sideways position. I did it more like that when I first learned, and that's the reason I was a slow starter for many years, which didn't matter so much gambling, but it did in tournaments. So when I started playing tournaments at the highest level with all the best players in the world, I was in Toronto, Canada, and that's where I learned what I'm teaching now. I learned the foundation of it, and then I put together a whole protocol that anybody can use to be able to achieve that same motion that I use, and all the top champions use something similar. I mean, we all look a little different doing it, but most of the best players in the world will freely admit that they could get better. And I was one of those players, because my first tournament in Toronto, I beat Efren Reyes and Earl Strickland back-to-back. Ended up getting fourth in the tournament, and you'd think I'd be satisfied and really happy with that, but I could tell watching them that they were doing something different than I was. And I didn't know what it was at first, but it just so happened I ran into an expert there in Toronto that showed me. First he showed Roger Griffiths, I've told that story, but then he showed it to me, and I took 2 weeks and just went as dedicated as I could to learn this new approach to going down on the ball. And I pretty much mastered it in like 2 to 3 weeks, and then I hit the ground running and went to Reno and played in the Sands Regency tournament, and ended up getting third. And I had wins over Johnny Archer, Nick Varner, and one that was one of my best matches, and it was the #1 video of the year that year on AccuStats, was when I played Steve Mizrak, The Miz. And he was a kind of an idol of mine growing up. I saw him on TV a lot. He did the light beer commercials, and if you've ever heard my story about when I got kicked off the basketball team, I told my coach 8 years before I ended up playing him that someday I was going to be a pro player and beat that Steve Mizrak. And he just laughed at me, scoffed at me, and basically threw me out of his office. But when I was going out, I was thinking, I'm going to show him one day. So that's why I say a lot of times haters, I don't like hanging around them or anything, but they do serve a purpose, because sometimes you need that negative reinforcement and that feeling of just proving people wrong. You know, that's not the best attitude, but it does help at times. I've played people in gambling matches where people would come up and try to bet me on the side and tell me I couldn't win, but that didn't last very long, because you can talk all you want, but at the end of the day you got to stop talking and start chalking. You got to let your cue do the work. And when people see the way that I go down on the ball, they can tell, at least subconsciously, that I'm doing something that's superior to what they're doing. And the longer we play, the better I'm going to get at it. And the way that I go down on the ball takes the pressure off my neck and my back, and I can basically go down into a shooting position, and I could stay there for an hour and I'd be okay. So when you're learning this, there's several different advantages. You're absolutely centered. Plus, when you go down on the ball, you're using your hips and the center of your body. So it's kind of like a lever. If I put this up and push on my elbow, my hand goes down. So instead of my hand going down, I push my elbow back and my hand goes down. That's pretty similar to what you're doing when you're going down on the ball this way that I'm referring to, like a lever. So you can keep your upper body in the same position as much as possible, push your hips back, and then your shoulders turn as your left hand goes in front of you, so everything lines up there at the last instant. So what I'm doing is, instead of lining up on my hip first, like a lot of people are doing, I'm lining up on the center of my chest, and then when I step and push my hips back, my hips clear perfectly so that I have room, like a slot, to put the cue, which also enables me to make the stick go straight all the time. Because if you're out of position, a lot of times your wrist will start twisting into your body a little bit. It'll throw your cue off, and you'll also throw the cue ball off from its path and miss the shots or miss your position. So having these techniques, there's lots of different philosophies on fundamentals, but what I'm showing you is time tested, and a lot of them will just tell you to do what feels natural. That's not what I'm suggesting. The human body isn't made to play pool, so you can't just do what feels right, because it's probably wrong. At least when you're learning this game, and especially if you want to play at a super high level, it's not going to feel right at first. Just like riding a bike doesn't necessarily feel right at first. I mean, I remember I did scuba diving in Hawaii, and I didn't have any fear of the water or anything like that. But when I got down about 20 feet and was breathing underwater, that did not feel natural. And that's an extreme example. But the thing about playing pool is, if it was natural, you'd see a whole lot more people playing better. But you don't. For the most part, you see a lot of people that play for 3 to 5, even 10 years, and they never improve. If you learn the way that I'm talking about playing the game, because once you get the footwork right and centered, then I can show you how to preset the angle of your cue, and I'll show you that there's 4 angles to your cue, and there's also 4 aiming angles. 4 of them come off the center to center alignment, 4 of them come off the centered edge alignment, but you're using the same 4 angles of the cue relative to those alignment positions. So there's 2 alignments. There's the feet alignment, but then there's the cue alignment. So there's a lot of players that have their feet pretty good, but they're not aligning their cue to the shot before they go down on the ball. Because what you want to do is get into the feeling and have the attitude that you're going down on every shot as if you've already made it. So I never thought about like aiming systems or anything like that. I just did everything so well to prepare for the shot that when I went down on it, it was just like automatic pilot. I'm beginning with the end in mind, like Stephen Covey wrote in his book, 7 Steps of Highly Effective People. I'm doing the same thing. I'm beginning with the end in mind so that I can go down on every shot as if I've already made it. So, Jimmy Reid, I would recommend, the No Time for Negative, has some good stuff in it, but he also advocated using a 55-inch cue, which Omaha John and a few of the top road players also used a shorter cue. Especially on a bar table, I think it's superior. And on a big table, it might be better if you're working on your short range game. I think you might have, the only disadvantage with the shorter cue is on the long game. Like when you're shooting a lot of long shots and you need the extra power, that longer cue will help you a little bit in that respect. Like Shane Van Boening, like his long game is really good. His short game's great too, but I think he's probably a little bit stronger if you really looked at and compared him to other players with his long game and or long shots. So with that longer cue, it's just hard. What a lot of players do, and I see them like Federer, is they take the extension off when they're shooting the shorter range shots. So they've got that covered. So they're basically using 2 cues where everybody else is using 1. So definitely an advantage if you do that, I would think. So one other thing that Jimmy Reid was into was self-hypnosis tapes. And if you've ever heard of Louis Roberts, St. Louis, he was one of the most talented players of all time. He liked using self-hypnosis tapes, and I experimented with them. I've got a master's degree in Ericksonian hypnosis, so that was a passion of mine for a number of years. Not really to hypnotize people, but to understand how the mind works and to apply that knowledge really to my pool game. And that's where I expressed it, was through getting in that dead stroke, getting in that zone, and being able to play for hours and hours and hours without making a mistake, and really not thinking much at all, being at a subconscious level. So what I learned about the hypnosis tapes is I will only do them if it's in my own voice, because your subconscious will always have its guard up against other people's voices, and rightfully so. So you don't just believe everything you hear, and you need that guard, especially in this time of or day and age. There's a lot of information out there that you're going to have to deflect, and it's difficult at times because the majority of the people are going to believe pretty much anything they see on TV. So it makes it a little bit challenging. But if you're going to get into the hypnosis and the hypnotic tapes, I'd recommend making my own, doing it in your own voice. Just record. You can probably search the internet and find some good positive self-hypnosis things that you can read. Just make sure you keep everything in positive terms. Your subconscious doesn't really understand the nots and don'ts and can'ts. That's why if you're playing golf with somebody and you say, don't hit it in the water, you probably make them aggravated, because their subconscious is really only going to calculate and process the hit it in the water. So that's kind of a gamesmanship thing. I stay away from doing stuff like that because I think it's kind of tacky, but I am on guard that I can hear it when other people are doing it to me. And if they do it to me, that gives me the green light to turn it around and do something even stronger to them, which I have had to do a few times. But there again, just like in a fight, I'm not going to throw the first punch, but if somebody throws one at me, it's their responsibility what happens, and they're going to get certain consequences they might not have realized. So it's the same thing on the mental game. What you want to develop is the attitude that if the balls don't go where you want them to do, they always go somewhere better. And that's something that you got to practice as well. So when you're practicing and you don't make a shot, try not to feel anything negative. Just set the shot up again, shoot it again, recalculate it, and don't ever leave a shot when you're practicing that you didn't make the last time. So even if I have to shoot the same shot 5 times, I don't care. My mind's only going to remember the last one I shot. So that's the most important, because then when that shot comes up again in a match, my mind is, the freshest memory is how I made it the last time. So that's just a good piece of advice. And like I said, your mind will accept what your own voice says, but it really won't accept a stranger's voice. Maybe somebody that you know, but I would recommend always doing it in your own voice. Anyway, that's some tips, and I'm going to start teaching more and more how to preset the angle of your cue, because a lot of people are ordering these stance and stroke trainers, and I want to make sure that they get the most out of them. So I'm going to send them another video, and when you get these trainers, you get access to a website. It's on the card that comes. All you got to do is scan it, and it'll take you to the website that has several videos on how to use the Super Stroke Trainer. But I'm going to do one specifically on the Super Stance one, that's I'm going to make more public, but right now I'll probably just use the one that I've already made, because I really liked how the information came out. It's just using a phone, sometimes the lighting just isn't quite right, and I have bought a few extra lights I'm going to start using, but at the time I didn't have that. So anyway, hope y'all are doing well, and I'll I'll talk with you soon.